First order of business, it was requested that we could have periodic briefings on what's going on with something in the water. This is obviously a very big event that we're looking forward to coming through. But once again, there's a lot of concerns and complexities with here, and in the effort of transparency and, just getting things out not only to the public, but, for operational effectiveness. We're going to be having these briefings to find out exactly what is going on. So, Mr. Hanson, if you could be so kind to proceed.
Well, I think you've stolen all that thunder, but I would like to open by saying that we have been doing public information meetings with regards to College Beach Weekend for the previous 6 years. And we got a new person to go to the podium and be in charge last night, and we tenfold the turnout. So I'm feeling really embarrassed that I couldn't draw him in. But I just turn it over to our liaison for Something in the Water for his introductory comments about what happened last night.
Thank you again. Last night was again, the people came out. They had a lot of questions. There was a lot of concerns. But first, I'd just like to take our hat off to our city staff that was there last night, as well as Julie Hill and Mr. Solis here, as well as the promoters from the event. I know some of you may have watched on TV, but the tone of the event of the community meeting last night went over very well. There were a lot of questions. We were able to get to a lot of the questions on the cards, but there were still some. I know we are constantly reaching out to those to the people. But once again, I think the information that was provided last night, a lot of people walked away feeling very, very comfortable and have a lot more understanding of what all the details of this festival and the planning stages of this. So I take it to Mr. Solis here, but went very, very well, as well as our esteemed chief again, Severa, was there last night to answer questions as well on security purposes, and I don't think we left no stone unturned last night. And obviously, we still have another job to do to continue to get as much information out as we possibly can. So, great job last night to the city staff.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Rouse, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Ingram. Just would like to thank DCM Ron Williams here for supporting the cause along with the city manager. Some of the unsung heroes throughout this is kind of the sage advice we've been getting from our city attorney's office, Mr. Ingram, Mr. Harmeyer over there. Really appreciate that. And of course, we've had a very strong supportive cast from all of our public safety departments, from police, fire, EMS, emergency management, and of course our communications office. So I really appreciate that effort. And what we're going to do today is kind of walk through a very comprehensive briefing of where we stand with supporting the Something in the Water Festival as a large-scale private special event. We're going to start with an overview of where we are with the program, because we're now finally at a place that it's a solidified program. We know what we're permitting. We know what's going to go on and where, what days and what times. Going to touch on traffic management. The chief's going to kind of go over some safety and security to the extent that he's able to reveal. Julie's going to chime in about pretty extensive communications plan that we have in coordination with the festival organizers. And then just let you know where we are with some key milestone dates and activities. And then we'll, of course, stand by for any questions questions you might have. So this is meant to be kind of at the 5,000 or 10,000 foot view of the oceanfront area, and the blue indicates areas that are kind of activations or parts of the festival in particular. And then the next version will show you kind of a more festive type of map that is more for rendered or for the public's consumption. But this is kind of more of a technical drawing of showing you that the main part of the festival footprint is the 10th Street to 5th Street to Rudy Loop area that will support the main music acts going on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you look to the right, as I go through these activations, it'll tell you what days and times that they're going to be available for either ticket holders and or the public. So the main stage area is 2 p.m. Friday That looks like it's been compressed. It's supposed to also have Saturday and Sunday. So Saturday is from noon to 11 p.m. and then Sunday is from noon until 10 p.m. We're going to get to the convention center slide in a second, and I'd like to appreciate Brian Miller being here as he's been really working with Courtney Dyer and Avery on the overall program there. But that's where the main music acts are. It is an area to support 35,000 ticket holders. This is kind of the first time that I'm aware of that we've kind of closed off Rudy Loop to the public, and that's because of the number of artists we have involved and the amount of set changes and support that they require. I believe we're somewhere in the 35 artist range, if not a little bit more at this point. So that's the main part of the entire festival, and that's for all 3 days. Another large part, hopping over here to the 19th Street to 23rd Street area, is the pop-up church. And pop-up church, and I have a slide on that was released today, both the gospel artists as well as the number of congregations that are so far involved and have been invited to participate there. But that's Sunday from noon until about 9:15. Trying to get everybody out and over before the concerts let go just up the Atlantic Avenue there. 2,500 invited guests, and I'll show you kind of a more detailed layout of that, and then they can accommodate up to 7,500 more folks that just want to come and take part in what really is a revival going on throughout the day and into the early night. Here at 24th Street Park is Adidas. So in an earlier briefing, I indicated that there was going to be a 3-on-3 basketball tournament that would go on in our school system and culminate with semifinals and finals in the convention center with celebrities and potentially professional athletes. There wasn't time to pull that together, so Adidas came into town, their representatives, and said we'd actually just like to do kind of an activation and demonstration or working with the public about our brand. So they asked to take on 24th Street there. They'll put a basketball court on the beach itself, and it will have actually bleachers around it, and they're going to do something to the effect of having a hoop there with a super slow-mo cam where you can kind of see yourself shooting or dunking a basketball, and then you can kind of upload it on an app and get all those freeze frame pictures of yourself doing that. So it's an interactive type of activation. So that is Friday and Saturday throughout late morning into the evening. Array is a partnership with Netflix where they are screening a movie that I believe was released March 31st, and it's a movie that was set in Ghana, Africa. It's my understanding that the park is going to kind of be in the motif of Ghana, Africa, and as well as the food that's available there, and that's, I believe, up to the about 1,200 guest range there, and that, I believe, is ticket holders primarily. That is from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. only on Friday night. Sony is at the 19th Street South parking lot and Pacific Avenue. Sony is a kind of premier sponsor with the festival. They're actually going to construct this dome over the mostly the northern end of that space, and inside that will be a variety of demonstrations of some of their latest products and a virtual reality experience. They'll also have a small stage for promotions and that type of thing. They'll have kind of support there with restrooms and comfort stations, and then they'll have 2 gaming trailers that kids can go in and play some of the latest games that have debuted with Sony PlayStation. One of the newest activations to come to the table is Timberland, the apparel company. They are going to take over, that's 17th Street and Pacific Avenue, the parking lot in front of 17th Street Surf Shop, and do what's kind of like a lounge that somewhere to come in and hang out and learn about the latest apparel that Timberland has to offer there. Trap the Vote is they call it a civic engagement process, but what it is, or organization, but what it is educating young people on the importance of voting and teaching them how to vote. And so my understanding is that they're going to have some artists or famous people there to try to draw in folks from the street to teach them the importance of voting and how to vote. 17th Street Park, Chrysler Museum is going to have their mobile glass blowing exhibit here, and Michael Berlucci's here that helped to make that happen. So that's an activation of art there at 17th Street. And the XQ Super School Live, you may have heard about the event the Thursday night before at Zyder's American Dream Theater. They have a bus that travels the country to those 17 or so cities where this program highlighting high school drama school programs go on. So that they have a bus that accompanies them and kind of tells about the program. That's going to be parked on the boardwalk in that same vicinity for the entire festival there. Something I didn't talk about was this little guy here. That little thumbnail is actually a piece of art, inflatable art, that is about 80 feet by 150 feet. It's about a 5-story building tall of inflatable art by the artist by the name of Kaws, Kaws. There's one that's floating in the middle of Victoria Harbor now in Hong Kong. A version of that is going to be shipped to the port of LA. Trucked across country and landed here. They have a 24-hour security team that comes with it, and if the wind's over a certain amount, you can't even inflate it. So it may or may not pop up, but at some point throughout the weekend, it probably will. And that's kind of, in addition to being art, it shows where the major music acts are going to be, because you can see it from a good distance away up the oceanfront there. Heading west, Old Beach Market. So you know the market that occurs down at the Vibe and the Crocs area, and it also includes the backstage area of Waring's, behind Waring's Gym. That's going to be activated. It's affiliated with the festival somewhat. They're a community partner, but they came in with their separate application. Laura Hayes did on that. And then a lot of activity is going on at the convention center. It's also a hub for our regional shuttle program, as well as a stop on the trolley service. And we'll talk about that. So just released today is an updated lineup, some of additional artists with Thoreau and Friends, but also the full list of churches that have been invited to participate in the pop-up church, as well as some nationally known gospel singers in the lineup there that will be happening throughout the day. So I haven't counted them, but I know we were thinking about the 24, 25 congregation range, and they will park and ride at either Greenbrier Mall or Military Circle, and come in on coach buses and be staged between 19th Street and 23rd Street on Atlantic Avenue to come and go throughout the day and evening. So again, as I promised, this is kind of a more festive type of map. Looking at the legend here. You can see some of the premier sponsors. One of the reasons why it takes a long time to get this map out there is that all of these corporate sponsors have to sign off on how their brand is being presented in the context of it. So it takes some time to get everybody to sign off on these type of things. So this is within the stage area. That's kind of what the big inflatable looks like. You start with a wristband check here in the 10th Street area. So that's your first layer of determining whether or not you can move forward east into the concert area, and then you go into a full body scan area, 35 of them, and then into bag check, and then you're into the space where they'll have some large shade structures, be a very festive atmosphere, vending along the side of the boardwalk, some food trucks up on the boardwalk as well. Uber Eats is a service that highlights local restaurants. So every day there'll be a different 2 or so restaurants that would bring in food to be available for you to order there if you're in a concert area, and it's a way to highlight local restaurants. Some of the presenting sponsors are here as well, in addition to down here below. This is the main stage area, which is about 2.5 times the size of the normal stage that goes there, both in depth and somewhat in width. You have an ADA viewing area in the VIP area here as well. Or actually just north of that, and so that's kind of your main concert area. So this is a little bit hard to read because it's such a wide or large footprint. Anytime you see the little color circle here, we look over at the key, and all of these dots here that have kind of the color palette on them are part of the art walk, and I'll talk about that in a second. So throughout the festival footprint, artists will be painting throughout the festival, and that's day and night. And we'll talk more about that in a second. One thing I haven't talked about yet is the Trap Karaoke is a late night event at the convention center from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. That is a ticketed event. I believe it's up to 3,000 is the capacity, Brian, or so?
Still waiting.
Give or take? Okay. This shows you basically a kind of a cartoon version of the map, a more technical map I showed you earlier. So Pop-Up Church is a pretty large-scale operation for half a day. And 20th Street is kind of a main connector park that really is a welcoming location for folks to load into. This is about a third of an acre of flooring just for back-of-house functions. The stage, the generators that are tractor truck-sized generators, green rooms for the artists, catering services back-of-house. This is a place for ADA chairs. This is seating for 2,500 invitees, and this is an additional half acre of flooring. You will go through security here to enter here, and what you see here is it's actually going to be fenced in here for those that were invited. This is a shade structure behind it to the north that can accommodate an additional 7,500 folks. You will not obviously have to pay anything to go and be part of church service, so this is free and open to everybody. But this is kind of a 10,000 person area, and then folks can kind of watch from around as best they can. But it can accommodate a good crowd there for church service throughout the day. So I told you about the art walk. These are the locations proposed for the art walk. I'd like to thank the Cultural Affairs Office for really helping and assisting in this process. I think I indicated before to you that Teens with a Purpose was a nonprofit group that helped facilitate high school age students to talk about what something in the water means to them. So what does it mean to be from here and to use your creative side to inspire you? And they did the same with the college student age focus group. And the Cultural Affairs Office synthesized that feedback in the focus group into briefs that it gave to this artist, B. Mike, out of New Orleans, to create a portfolio of art that he will coach local artists to put on throughout that footprint of the numbers you see there. And this is an example of some art that B. Mike has done in the past. So social media, every once in a while, it's becoming more frequent. There will be posts on social media about what's going on at Something in the Water. This is kind of a pitch sponsored by Old Dominion University and Cox Communications on innovation in terms of creating an app, creating software, creating some type of entrepreneurial technology, mostly as a competition to potentially receive startup funding to advance their ideas into a business. There'll be religious type talks going on at the convention center, and we'll talk about the programming a little bit more here. This kind of gets into the details of what's going on where, and this isn't even all the details. You'll see, I think maybe on the next slide, actually right here, there's also space reserved in case of inclement weather at some of the outdoor events to be folded into the convention center instead. This is some of the other activities that are going on. You've heard about the Women's Ministries conference going on. It's about 2,600 attendees. And then a public safety type of training with the FBI and others starts feeding in, setting up on Thursday, but the attendees start coming in on Sunday. So a lot of activity at the oceanfront. We haven't even talked about the tattoo festival that's staying down here. So I invite you at your leisure to go to somethinginthewater.com, and at the top right, there is a tab to click on Getting Here. There is so much information there to provide folks that are interested in coming down. And in a lot of ways, it guarantees them to be able to get to Virginia Beach and to the ticketed areas of the event. The big one is something new for us is this regional shuttle program that they use this company Fest Drive, F-E-S-T Drive, that has been used in the Super Bowl and large-scale events around the country that kind of crowdsources coach buses, for lack of a better term. They are set up regionally, and then as far north as Baltimore and D.C., to as far south as Durham, North Carolina, to Richmond, but a lot of them in Hampton Roads, Hampton, Suffolk, Chesapeake, Norfolk. And it's kind of based on ticket sale data on where the tickets were acquired from. You can sign up and you're guaranteed to come in. This will take you to the convention center, a way in and then a way out. At the end of the evening, you're going back home, and you can buy a day ticket, full round trip, or 3-day. And it's a little cheaper, less expensive if you do the 3-day. And you can even bring your bike. So I think they have storage for at least half the folks to bring their bikes and which I would encourage them to do, because this one takes you to the convention center. The northwest parking lot of the convention center is set for these regional shuttles. The park and ride, we are between, we're likely to go to the amphitheater for the park and ride, and primarily because of the wet weather we've received. We were looking at General Booth Dam Neck, but it's highly likely we're going to the amphitheater. It's a kind of a turnkey operation there, so we're working through the details of that. The Uber Lyft pickup will be at the convention center as well. We're trying to work out the details of that. Encouraging people to park legally, you know, somewhere in close proximity to the resort, and then bike in, and then you have the most freedom being able to park that and become a pedestrian. Public transportation, HRT is starting their trolley service early, and that includes a western jog down 17th Street across the convention center, Jefferson Avenue there, serving the convention center, and then back down 21st Street to Atlantic Avenue, and that whole route is going from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. every day. And if you are, there's going to be a drop-off just outside of the concert area for parents and for taxis to drop off and pick up as well. And the reason why that's there versus Uber and Lyft is that you can tell who's there, what car you're getting into. For a taxi, you can get into any taxi. For Uber and Lyft, it's usually the one that you've coordinated with. And then for parents, you know how to text and find which car is your parents there. And that's why it's easier for that to be closer to the footprint than, say, the convention center. So that's all of the transportation options I just went over. I want to talk about what our approach has been been set up to manage this event. And this has been coordinated heavily with our public safety folks and the festival organizers. The main command center for this will be in the second precinct area, and that will be primarily public safety, but there'll also be festival representatives in with public safety, so that there is seamless communications going on at all times. The festival also has a set of web-based cameras that we'll have, in addition to the hardline cameras that we already have. We'll have access to their cameras. Rudy Loop is the main branch for the festival's management, but we'll have, I believe it's lieutenant on the police side, level staff there for all three public safety branches with the festival organizers there, so there's seamless communication there as well. The Emergency Operations Center will be open, and Aaron Sutton and staff will be there with that. They have the best eyes on the entire resort with all the cameras that they have there, and it's good to have your EOC out of the festival footprint. Traffic Management Center off Dam Neck Road will be open. They'll have eyes on all the intersections and all the cameras that they have access to, and they can make adjustments to the traffic signal timing on a moment's notice that way. Speaking of traffic management, there will be restrictions, diversions, detours. The main one that a lot of folks ask about is the diversion on the interstate. So as anybody will tell you, we don't really have permission to close the interstate, but what we do is folks come down I-264 East, they are diverted on Parks Avenue North, and then diverted by taking a left at 22nd Street and turned back around once gridlock. If gridlock has been reached and all parking has been filled in the resort area. And the goal with that is try to kind of turn off the spigot of traffic pouring into the resort and slow it down. As the term that police use is pulsing traffic. So, you know, doing diversions until traffic dissipates some, and then you open up those type of detours again. And so, just like it says here, that's when that diversion kind of would start. Right now, the only real streets we're proposing to, I guess, close for lack of a better term, are from 10th Street to 5th Street on Atlantic Avenue, those perpendicular streets between Pacific and Atlantic, and that's primarily because of the shuttle traffic that will be coming in and picking people up and dropping people off in front of the main concert area. Winston-Salem will be a hard closure as well to prevent a lot of through traffic coming into Shadow Lawn. But the businesses on Winston-Salem Avenue will be open
For how
traffic
long?
throughout the event. But residents.
Yeah, because there are residents in hotels.
So
right there,
I'll talk about that. So
including mine.
what's that? So
Including mine.
yes. So on Winston-Salem, for example, residents will be are going to be directed to come in from Norfolk Avenue. They'll be what they call Tier 2 roadblocks up or that discourage through traffic that say residents only, no through traffic, and there'll be enough gap for residents to be able to get through. And so you may say, well, the residents get through, then that means anybody can get through. Well, the difference with residents is that they have somewhere to park. So they'll be able to get through and get to their homes. On Atlantic Avenue to between 5th Street and 10th Street, there will be credentials that will be rolling out very close to the week of the event, so they're not able to be copied. And the festival organizers are working with folks on that. I know I've been missing the owner of El Jardinios. We've been missing each other, but I'm going to catch up with him on everybody else. Their employees will be able to park as of April 1st. They should have received their or applied for their employee parking passes for the RPP. Those will be available, 4,000 or so spaces for folks to park like they normally would. They would need to plan to get there in time, but those spaces should be available for them like they always are. It's just going to take longer to get there. As will the residents be able to still park there. It'll be a 24-hour RPP.
So were we supposed to have gotten a postcard? Because I haven't gotten one. At 921 Atlantic.
So, yes, the residents are supposed to get them. Like I said, they don't give them out till right before the event, so they're not able to be duplicated, is what we've been told. I'll get an exact date from you, Ms. Wilson. And I need to make sure that your condo is part of that. So I know so I've asked specifically from the organizers who they've talked to. Is it the condo president or the administration? They said the administration. So
Well, there's 401 Atlantic too, those are condos.
yes, ma'am. There's Dolphin Run, there's
Dolphin
Ocean.
Run,
I mean,
right.
so there's a lot. And there's also the residents that are even further up, further south, in the bulb of 4th Street there that need access as
Well, it's
well.
401, yeah,
So
203.
we want to prioritize high occupancy vehicles, so that's coach buses, HRT buses and trolleys. Anyone carrying a lot of people get priority throughout traffic management. One innovative thing, and I've talked about it before, is the Waze traffic app. I can't overemphasize enough how unique this is to Virginia Beach, and again, thank Julie Hill and your IT staff for helping to make this happen. And that is, we'll be able to put on Waze the temporary park and ride for the festival is here at the amphitheater. We'll be able to put on their road closures. We did it during the Shamrock. We'll be able to put in a schedule of when those road closures are scheduled to be in effect. All of that will be on Waze and Google Maps, because Google owns Waze. It's just Google sometimes doesn't provide the detail that Waze does. It's just up to them, but both will have that option. 19th Street will be a pedestrian corridor, primarily from Arctic Avenue to Parks Avenue. The businesses are becoming even more aware, as will the residents. They'll have access to their homes, and then police will be allowing through traffic on the cross streets on an as-needed basis for the most part. The major Amtrak and HRT transfer at Arctic Avenue between 19th Street and 20th Street will still happen, and they'll still facilitate that. So the HRT buses and Amtrak throughway service will still be running. It just may have some delays. And I'll let the chief talk about the augmented security forces. So what to expect? Expect congestion for sure, and the closures I just told you about. It's gonna be slow going, and folks need to plan accordingly. One thing that we're trying to work within is that the school buses still need to get folks home to and from the schools and the residents that are at the oceanfront area. I just told you about Winston-Salem. There'll be signs that say the businesses are still open on Winston-Salem Avenue, all of them, so that they can benefit from the foot traffic that's going to be enhanced in the area as well. And really just telling folks to obviously bring their patients, and encouraging folks to carpool at every opportunity. That could be just going up a block. Hopefully you're not getting your car to go up a block, but even short distance or long distances, it's critical to carpool. It'll be easier on everybody to do it that way. The festival will have a hotline themselves, that they will have a hotline a few hours before start time and a few hours afterwards of every day of the festival to receive input, comments, complaints, and coordinate those with the city and also internally within themselves. And that's been publicized in the mailer that went out to every resident in the 23451 zip code. And they paid for that mailer, that $10,000 worth of mailing that went on. by the way, and Julie coordinated the messaging with them. See something, say something, always, it's a national campaign. This is resident access, so depends on your zone, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, Council Member Wilson. I could put you in direct contact with the lady, Jess Cortez, that is coordinating for the festival. And if you don't like the answers you're getting, then we will step into that. So safety and security, I want to invite the chief up to talk about that some to the extent that he's comfortable with, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Vice Mayor. We know that this festival will be maybe not bigger than 4th of July, because 4th of July is a large event, and we know that during the daytime about 100,000 people will float in and out of the Beach Borough. The big difference between this particular festival and any other event we have is it will go on for 3 days, where 4th of July is usually the one evening, and then although the weekend is busy, it does kind of smooth out. And the second big thing about 4th of July is a lot of families are at the oceanfront, and there's a certain time of night where the families begin to head westbound, north or south, and they leave the resort area. This will be mainly young folks, and as you know, young folks don't ever go home and go to sleep. So we're prepared to be out for the hours that our crowds will be out there. We know how big the venue will be. We have a safety and security plan for the venue. We have a safety and security plan for the rest of the oceanfront, for the entire Beach Borough, and we have a safety plan, as we always do, for our other 475,000 citizens in the rest of the city. We have all those plans in place. I want you to know that we've been working diligently with the professionals in our fire department and EMS, and I always say that our fire department is second to none. These men and women of our fire department in Virginia built Virginia Task Force 2. They know how to work a major event, and they know should something go awry during that major event, they know how to respond appropriately. EMS, one of the largest in the country, maybe the largest volunteer system in the country, supported by a great network of professionals. They know where to pre-position their assets. Both police, both fire and EMS will have assets pre-positioned so they can move anywhere around the Beach Borough at a moment's notice. And that's a fantastic, comforting thought for all of our citizens. From the police end, we have planned for and we practice every kind of event you can think of during the entire summer. We will just have the same plans during this particular weekend. We are augmented by Ken Stolley in the Sheriff's Department. They will assist us greatly, especially in the traffic areas where we need extra officers, extra boots on the ground to attempt to move the traffic that's going to inundate that area. We're also, Deputy Chief Dean did a fantastic job with the state police. We will have the largest contingent we've ever seen of state troopers assisting us during this weekend. So we've mobilized the entire police department. We are working 10 to 12-hour shifts, depending on what area of the city you're in. Out of the Beach Borough, it will be 12-hour shifts for the officers working in the precincts. And again, we're assisted by the state police, not only in the footprint of the festival, but in other areas of the city where we could free up more officers to bring them down to the resort area. And we're assisted by the Sheriff's Department. Just one caveat to a lot of the traffic that Brian has talked about, and that is, remember, one of the main entrances to the resort area will be General Booth Boulevard. And we have to keep in mind the Virginia Beach Exchange Club has 3,000 folks going to Camp Pendleton, and they're going to be on General Booth Boulevard. So we also have the Women's Ministers Conference going to the Convention Center. They will be part of that traffic plan that we have at the oceanfront. So we mix all of this together. Traffic will be, as I keep saying, extremely interesting during this weekend. But we do have a very robust safety and security plan with the police, the Sheriff's Department, with the state police, and with our colleagues, our professional colleagues in fire and EMS. I guess we'll take questions later.
Okay, yes, sir. So that want to get into communications, and again, your Director of Communications, Julie Hill, has really done a great job as always. But in this case, unlike previous years of coordinating with a whole host of folks on the festival side, from the publicist for Pharrell to all the communications folks with the production company and everybody in between. So I wanted to invite Julie up to come up and talk about that a little bit, if she could. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Happy to present a really quick overview of what we have been coordinating with not only the festival, but a lot of the other people in and around the city. And it really has an approach that combines a lot of different elements, but fundamentally around the idea that we want to not only provide information that will be available for people to pull down at their leisure. So if you're up at 2 in the morning and you want to go on the computer, the information will be available for you there, but also that we're pushing information out directly to people who are most impacted. So you have everything from people with the festival who are going literally door to door in and around the major footprint of the festival to facilitate the traffic plan, to the postcard that was mailed to about 25,000 people in the 23451 zip code. So it's a combination of the push and pull, online and offline, a variety of sources. We realize that not everybody pays attention to a certain media outlet, but if we cover all of them, that we'll get as much out there as we possibly can, and that really has been the goal here. We'll also then couple that with a plan that has staffing throughout the weekend. So we'll co-locate with the festival in one of the areas. We'll also have the presence at the EOC with one thing that wasn't highlighted there, but it's part of the EOC is a joint information center. So that will be operational pretty much for about 20 hours a day, hoping that there's a little bit of break in between there. We've got a whole list of tactics. I don't have to read the whole list to you, but it is a combination of things that the festival is putting out, as well as the things that the city is putting out, and then things that we're doing jointly. And it is everything from making sure that the somethinginthewater.com website is, and the event app, which should be released today, is looked at as primary sources of festival information, to things that we are, as their force multiplier, putting things on our website, putting things out on our social media, using our various resources for the meetings and the presentations, including last night. The festival has a pretty extensive plan for wayfinding and signage all throughout the festival footprint that will be put in place. We'll be looking at 311 as a major source for information and newsletters and any of the other things that we can have here. One of the things that the festival did that we think was really a great service for people, especially immediately impacted, is making a direct connection to people who can answer their questions. Last night's meeting that Councilman Rouse facilitated, we really tried to focus on global questions, but not everybody's question is global. Some people have very specific circumstances that they need addressed. The residents at somethinginthewater.com and the info at somethinginthewater.com resources have really helped to facilitate some of those individual one-off situations that people have had, and we've had pretty good luck with that. So we are driving people to the somethinginthewater.com website and also the event app that will be out. One of the things that the police have wanted to put in place, and that the festival has as well, is a way to capture the see something, say something activity. And what we're trying to recognize is that the more we can keep people on one app, the better we are. So the Something in the Water, the festival event app, we think is going to be able to also capture some of that capability to report things if people see something that isn't quite right. So that will be a real key feature for the weekend. This is the postcard. It was mailed, but it's also on our website. So if somebody didn't get it or they want to pass it on, it's easy enough for people to download that themselves. Something in the Water has a pretty good footprint. It's new. The logistics of social media these days is the logarithms and the algorithms to get notice means that some of the numbers aren't as high as some of the others. They have almost 23,000 followers on Instagram, but it's lower. It's about 5,000 on their Twitter and Facebook. And so we supplement that. We're a force multiplier in addition to Waze and making sure that things go out on Waze. We're pushing things out through our footprint. We've got 75,000 followers on Twitter, 40,000 on Facebook. Next door, we have probably one of the largest groups in the country of members. We probably have more than half of our households who are members of Nextdoor. So that's a really key asset for the city. So we are really trying to push out as much as possible and use all of the available means that we have. These are some of the social posts that we'll use as we get closer to the event so that it's quick, it's a quick hit, and be able to communicate really short messages in a really attractive way.
Thank you, Julie. And I'm going to go over some of these that are a little bit faded out. That's actually, I think she might have went through. Nope, there she goes. These are some of the milestone activities and dates that we have already gone through, including last night's joint city festival organizer meeting. Really, you're going to start to see the build out actually April 17th, likely, of the 5th Street stage area. The convention center load in begins, shortly after that. Some of the pre-events, I guess, starting that Thursday, are the unveiling of the SeaTac Achievable Dream Academy Urban Garden. They're tripling the size of the urban garden there. There's kind of a children's activity with a super heroic brand there. Thursday night is that XQ Super School Live event at Zyder's American Dream Theater. Obviously, the festival for the 3 main days of Friday through Sunday night. And then the loadout begins really early morning, Monday morning, after the last concert, into the early mornings of April 29th. And then through May 2nd, if not a little bit beyond. There's a community beach cleanup that the festival organizers and local partners are coordinating. There'll be more information to come out on that. And just wanted to mention that we are planning on working with the festival to capture this year's economic impact, year one of the festival. Ron Berkebaugh, financial analyst out of your SGA office, that provided you with the analysis on the 9 largest events that go on in Virginia Beach on direct and indirect economic impacts. We'll be performing the analysis, but one of the key important parts is the festival organizers are going to work with him on getting surveying on the ground during the event. The key differentiator will be, did you come here for the festival versus already have a vacation planned, or you come for College Beach weekend and you knew about the festival or you didn't? And it's trying to determine who came here for the festival and what their spending was and other useful information. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions you might have, and we'll go from there.
Questions or concerns? Yes.
I had a comment, or I had a conversation with a constituent yesterday evening, and she had mentioned that she had some friends coming into the area who were purchased tickets, and that they were having trouble finding a hotel. And she had mentioned that they had reached out to Chesapeake, and Chesapeake is fully booked in terms of the hotels that are closest to us. More just curious if we'll be compiling the data of the economic impact for our neighboring cities so that we can have a full idea of what it's doing, not just for our city, but also for, I assume Norfolk's probably got an uptick in hotel stays as well.
Maxed out.
Sir.
May I respond?
Please.
So, I had a conversation with ODU. Vinod Agarwal, as you know, is in their School of Business and Economics, and he of course had an opportunity to look at the early February analysis we did on the 9 major events that we do that we've had on our curriculum for many years here in the Virginia Beach, and looked at that. He has volunteered his services to do the economic analysis. Now, Ron and his staff, Convention and Visitors Bureau, Economic Development, Planning, they will be required to help collect data, and they have methodologies to do that. We'll also be sharing with Brian's efforts along with the producers of the festival. So we're going to get a baseline economic impact analysis associated with this inaugural event. So I really appreciate him stepping up. He, as you know, is a Virginia Beach resident. He's excited for what this is going to bring to the city, and called me up out of the blue and said, hey, he'd like to do that. He'll take the data that we provide him. We'll have some coordination meetings about data collection so that it gets collected in a usable form, and we'll be able to give you some feedback as a
Yes.
council.
I did have one other question, and it just slipped my brain. So I'll pass until it comes back to me.
Think of it, we'll get you again. We'll go with Jim
was
and then
there.
Jim, then Sabrina.
So Brian, two questions. One, what's the plan for rain, since we live here?
So with every event and every special event, you're required to submit a foul weather or a weather matrix, inclement weather matrix, you could say. And it's very detailed, and for each incident, it gives you a series of protocol to take, depending on where you are, the nature of the event, what have you. So it's very detailed depending on what the event is. The outdoor events are pretty much rain or shine, except for high wind or electrical storm. So at which point they'll be postponed or
I
canceled.
just worry about people who spend all the money on the
Yep.
tickets if they can't.
It's
use
rain or
it, they're
shine.
gonna be
Rain or
Looking for
shine.
refunds or stuff, okay.
Yep,
The-
Sabrina.
the-
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I also had a couple of businesses in the Hilltop area and some property owners there were asking, they had specific questions about Laskin Road and whether or not we thought that would be backed up and what the impact was gonna be, because I believe the chief said sometime that Laskin Road was gonna stay open.
There's not planned to be closed, but it will be congested.
Yeah, and see, that's their question, was
It-
if there's an idea.
It will be highly likely it will be congested. Any parallel network to I-264 will be congested, but it's not, there aren't any plans to close it. To be honest with you, the pop-up church was looking at going down Laskin Road and maybe having a designated lane, and we kind of squashed that because of those reasons. And that the pop-up church coach buses will be coming north from Great Neck Road or other points north down Shore Drive and in that way. But it will be congested, but it will be open.
Okay, Sabrina, Barbara, then Jess.
So, I know this is a magnanimous task, and I appreciate all the work that the staff has done on this event. Only thing I would like to say, because there's so many moving parts and things are changing, and I asked Dave about having an itinerary, because I'd like to know what's happening each day. And as those changes, there may be major changes or things that come up, I'd like to know what those changes would be. And I ask that for all the council, since we are, ultimately responsible for the event. I'd like as many details as we can have. I appreciate the briefings, they're great, but I like to have something in here that's an itinerary that's specific and has details on each of those days and any major changes or changes that come, that happen during the event. I'd like to be abreast of those changes.
So the most dynamic way, and the way that we do it today with technology, is on the app, you can create your own itinerary. Just like, we will provide you hard copies, but letting you know the most nimble way would be to upload the app, and like any conference that you go to these days. Similarly, you can create your own itinerary, but in terms of logistics, I know that Aaron Sutton was planning on providing y'all with what the city's doing at least from a council level, for preparedness. She's planning on providing y'all with documents on that, but we can do that. It's something similar that comes out of other special events about what's going on what day. We can certainly do that.
Yeah, because I'm interested, and I'm certainly going to download the app, and I'm interested in knowing, that the general thing or the information is for the public, but I want to know, more of the details and logistics.
It's a daily action plan, ma'am, and we'll make sure you have that.
Yep, that's good. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
That's what I was referring to. That's the right term there, Chief.
That sounds good. Appreciate that.
Will do.
Barbara.
Speaking of changes, if I understand correctly that you're no longer planning to use General Booth and Dam Neck, but you're gonna use the amphitheater.
That's we're in the process of firming up. That is definitely the direction that we're heading. Yes,
And I
ma'am.
guess the amphitheater will take Dam Neck to the oceanfront?
Yes, ma'am. So there'll be kind of adjusted traffic control plan that tweaks signaling and signage, variable message boards that the festival will have to put out there. They've been coordinating with Spivey Rentals. Very detailed plan. We'll have to circle back with VDOT because we have some messaging we've been coordinating with them as well. So that's the direction we're headed. Yes, ma'am. Primarily because how wet the site's been and some other logistical issues. So.
I guess with the proximity to all the medical facilities there in the hospital, there's not a problem.
So as you might know, Councilmember Henley, there's a Prince Anne Commons, I just sent it around this morning, coordination group that includes Steve Gallagher and the rest of the folks at the Centera Hospital that are involved. That includes Parks and Recreation, agriculture, some of the other facilities, Old Dominion University, that need to coordinate there are special events and the maps going on. So there is there are some small scale events and some larger scale events going on down there. There's a softball tournament at Princeton Athletic Complex. There's a small Navy SEAL type of mud run going on in the back of the sportsplex, but that's self-contained within the site. There's the hoedown at the farmers market on Friday night. But these are all things that we can work within, and we've already looked at that. Got it from Rick Rowe in Parks and Recreation, that the map, the PA Commons activity map, and are trying to coordinate accordingly. So we're trying to be aware, just like when there's other large-scale events down there, like concerts at the amphitheater. We believe there'll be just a fraction of that traffic at the amphitheater, because you're only going to get a fraction of folks that are going to do the park and ride, especially now that we've moved it out to the amphitheater. But we are planning for it. We're planning for it.
Well, just so, people know well enough in advance, because people do need to visit the hospital and so forth at that time. And I know it can get pretty congested for amphitheater events, so, but for people to know. But, that's the kind of thing that I'm hearing, the questions is, what about the rest of the city and what's going to be going? So as these changes or impacts are known, we really need to do, to let everybody know.
We
what
hope
to
it
expect.
dissipates some. I mean, we hope that taking it away from that corner, although it's very helpful for acceptance, as we call it, for folks that would actually do the park and ride, to be a little bit closer to the footprint and having a little bit less of a park and ride commute. But to get further away from the resort might be helpful. And since only a percentage of the festival goers would use the park and ride, we're hoping that it dissipates the impact to the corridor some by doing that.
Okay, Jess, then Rosemary.
Actually had a couple other questions that I now remembered. One, how are we coordinating with the state park? I think they're open in April. I imagine quite a few people have probably scheduled to stay
At First Landing? Okay.
My only concern is, people will be coming to sleep there and have a good time. We want to make sure we're a good neighbor with I understand the state park's not technically our purview, but have we been in contact with them on what cleanup might look like in the event that?
Not on this. In a past life, I've coordinated with them a good bit. We most recently on the Route 35, when we implemented the service from the bayfront to the oceanfront, and they've been heavily involved, and they sell tickets from there, for example. But just like they would on any normal weekend, on Memorial Day or Labor Day or 4th of July, when they have a lot of traffic, they clean up accordingly. And surprisingly, there's still 250 or 225 sites left at Travel Park Campground. Not to advertise any particular one, and that's within a bike ride. And so that's for tent, though. All the cabins are gone. But we're surprised that a lot of folks, especially college-age kids, haven't found out about the campsites.
You get a tent for $30.
Yeah.
As the other concern we've heard a lot about is the neighborhood parking, particularly in the Red Mill area.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have an action plan for them, or are we saying it's a public street?
I forgot how many tens of thousands of miles we have in Virginia Beach, but if it's a public street, it's, got to be managed accordingly.
That's my impression.
Yeah, you're right, though. As you get closer to the resort, the likelihood of folks trying to parallel park is higher, and as you get further away, it's less. But if it's a public street, you pretty much can unless it's signed.
But we don't have any plans.
Unless you're blocking a through lane or somebody's driveway, you're permitted to park legally.
Okay.
Or the fire hydrant.
Or the fire hydrant. Yes, sir. Sorry.
Look at those.
Of course.
Look at those.
I have one last question, then I'm done. As far as when this all ends, I anticipate we'll have a really detailed briefing on what went wrong, what went right, what we can do better.
After action review?
Yes, a very, very, very detailed one. Great.
Okay,
That's it.
Rosemary.
I'm so impressed with all of the work and the planning that has gone into all of this under you, Brian, and the chief, and the fire, and all the departments that have worked, Julie, close together. This is a gigantic, gargantuan event, and as usual, you are the most amazing staff in the country. And Aaron, I've heard nothing but good things about your meeting last night. What a great job you did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's I'd just like to, if I
Sure.
can, on the bigger picture, the bigger scale of things, the world will be looking at Virginia Beach. The world. And this is an excellent opportunity for us to showcase all the important strides we've made, the openness we are to inclusion and diversity, but as well as the openness that we are ready for businesses to come here and invest in our community here. And, I think I'm so proud of our staff as well as the world-class promoters who have come here like you said, Ms. Wilson, there's a lot of work that has gone into this, but we can signal to the world we are going to be great hosts of this event, and it's not just a first-year event. This is just, the first step. This is a multi-year event where you have companies like Sony coming down, Adidas, who are investing millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars within our community. And I'm even impressed that they're going to fly calls in. I know you guys, calls is the big structure. I mean, all the way from Hong Kong to L.A., then truck it across country to Virginia Beach. I mean, people in Hong Kong going to be looking at where calls is going. All eyes going to be here on our city, and I think we have an opportunity to show the world that we are ready. Like we are ready, and we're going to make this thing success. There will be growing pains. Once again, there are a lot of things we will learn from this. And each year, the goal is to continuously progressively get better. And I'm looking forward to doing that. So, I'm excited.
One last thing, Mr. Manager, there will be updates coming out every Friday at least from the festival in terms of speakers at the convention center and other changes, the lineup by hour and by day. Right now it's by day, but more refinement to that so that folks could even plan, even create a more detailed plan for going to the festival.
That would be
Thank you.
itinerary
Itinerary.
changes
Yes.
would be occurring.
Thank you.
So be
Okay.
flexible.
Okay, that was a great presentation. I think what we have here is a tremendous opportunity and a challenge. And I'll tell you what, I am very delighted by the way things have been handled to date. And I think Aaron's right, the world's going to be watching us, and this is an opportunity for us not only to showcase Virginia Beach, but to showcase our police, our fire, our EMS, our sheriffs, our professional staff that have been working on this, but most of all, the people of Virginia Beach. And this has the real potential to make everybody, all 453,000 people in the city, proud of their city. And once again, Aaron is right. People are going to be looking at us, and this could be a beacon for people to say, I want to come to Virginia Beach as a tourist, or I want to come to Virginia Beach and open up my business and bring their families with us. So this is a tremendous opportunity. And it's going to be a challenge, without question. But let me tell you what I am heartened by. First of all, when I had some meetings preliminary, with Pharrell's folks, they are a true group of professionals that have been through this before. But I'll tell you what, our police department we're a tourist town. We have 4th of July. We have the Shamrock. So, this is going to be a larger magnitude. But if I can just share something that really gave me a little boost of confidence. At 1 o'clock today, the U.S. Attorney Zachary Telwiger came down from Richmond with his assistant and met with the Vice Mayor, Mr. Hanson, the Chief, and command staff. And the reason they drove all the way from Richmond was to acknowledge our police department in their efforts with opioids and heroin and everything. We are, believe it or not, considered a national standard for the intervention and what we do and how we handle things. And Jim can tell them, Mr. Hanson, they were extremely complimentary, and they gave statistics where it is an epidemic nationally, but in Hampton Roads, thanks to Virginia Beach, it's on the downside. We are actually showing positive results. So to me, that just bolsters the confidence that we have in our professional police staff. And Jimmy, did you want to comment?
No, what the mayor says is absolutely correct. One of the things they said when they were talking about it is the fact that Virginia Beach tends to do everything before everybody else does, and as a result, we're the leaders in this sort of thing, and specifically talking about opioid abuse and overdoses and things like that. And when you have, 2 federal Justice Department officials sitting in there in the mayor's office telling us, you guys are doing it right, we wish other communities could do this. It was very, it made us proud, but it is also a lot of what we do here directly impacts the way that our public safety organizations work, and it's gratifying to see that what we do works. So,
And I think,
being recognized
and
by
I
the
think
federal
Aaron's right. We're the ones that are going to set the standard for this type of event, and not only have it perpetuate every year, but also, even throughout the course of a year. So, Aaron, you think that's pretty true?
Yes, sir. I think that's right on point, on target. Again, this is a investment within our community that not just a one-year thing, but multiple year event that we want to make sure that I know have enormous economic impact, indirect and indirect. And when we talk about some of the challenges we face, I know that's one of the concerns that we have, to make sure that we can support an event like this to help us mitigate some of those concerns.
Outstanding. Thanks to all, and Aaron, kudos for what you've done so far. Mr. Hanson, your staff has been exemplary, and it's Julie, fantastic. This has been a true team approach, and this is how you get things done. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hanson, we're ready to move on.
Yes, sir, we still have many miles before we sleep on this festival. Ever vigilant. So I've asked our interim director of finance, Alice Kelly, to come in and give you an update on the deferred compensation plan. And before we begin, I would defer to the liaison to the deferred comp. Mr. Moss, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Just a couple. You remember a week ago Tuesday, I told you we were bringing forth this discussion item. When we converted most of our deferred compensation accounts, which belong to the participants, we're just the trustees, to VRS, to both lower the cost and therefore increase the yields, there was one account that didn't lend itself to be transitioned at the time due to interest rates in the economy, and that the market value that it had and the value that it had to participants didn't match, and therefore a loss would incur if we moved it. And so therefore we didn't move it. We hope that the market performance would treat us more kindly than it has. So we now have to, our contract expired, so now we have to get a new vendor to help us do that, and we still can't move the account and under current market conditions without creating a loss, which none of us want to do, and the participants don't either. It's not in their best interest, and that's our fiduciary responsibility, is to make sure people, maybe the purchasing power might somewhat decline, but it's not going to be a nominal loss. So she's going to talk today about what the board has endorsed as the way ahead, so then she can go out and engage the employees. We also notified all the employee associations and their leadership. I see Bill's here today, so that they could be here today to see that there isn't some kind of under a hat. This is a very transparent process in the best interest of the fund participants. And with that, over to you.
Thank you. Mayor Dyer, Vice Mayor Wood, council members. Councilman Moss was very gracious in explaining a lot of the slides that I'm going to do. We did call all of the employee representatives, ask them to either come in person or watch on the video. So if they're not here, they have been informed. Retirement, as you know, is a 3- or 4-legged stool. People have to have, some people have Social Security pensions, some people have their own savings, and then what we have in a lot of places is defined contributions. And the city has a 457 plan, which is very similar to a 401k in private industries. It's a voluntary contribution. You can save at your own rate. It's tax deferred, and all the codes are defined by IRS. We established the Virginia Beach 457 in 1981, and there's a defined compensation board that oversees the plan. It's a 10-person board appointed by council. If the plan is funded by revenue sharing, and when we had hybrid employees come on board in the city in 2014, we started evaluating, the defined comp board started evaluating our 457 plan. And because we were using the state's 457 for our hybrid, I think there was a lot of comparison of what the 457 for the state could do versus what our current contract was doing. Right now, as Councilman Moss mentioned, our 457 contract has expired, and we've done a couple of renewals and have extended that to November 2019. So the board looked at a few options. So the board had decided, and this was a briefing to council back in 2017, the board decided to move to the 457 with the state. It was a lot less fees. It was a lot more benefits to the participants for a lot of different reasons. But when we went to do the transition in June 2018, there was an issue with our stable value fund, which was called the Virginia Beach Fixed Income, which was a type of a stable value fund. And we couldn't ensure a full book value settlement. And a stable value fund is a very conservative investment. It's made of fixed income investments, and the whole idea is to preserve the principal and interest. However, it's not a guarantee. And that was the issue with it, is there was concern that employees might have thought it was a guaranteed conservative interest. And so when we went to go ahead and make the transfer, at the time, the market value and the book value were not the same, and so employees would lose some of their principal. And as we moved, we took a wait-and-see approach to see if maybe the interest rates would help. But while the interest rates have actually started declining a little bit, and the difference is a little less than what it was initially, it's still, employees would lose their funds. So the board looked at about 3 or 4 different options and decided that because we needed to go for a new contract, we did option number 2. We'd issue a request for a proposal for a new record keeper, but also ask for investment strategy to get the stable value fund back to full market value. And our investment advisor has counseled us that it would probably take about 3 years to do that. And so we are going forward with an RFP. We voted to do an RFP to do both new record keeper and the stable value fund to get that back up to value. Some things that won't change, though, about this is that employees will still have deferrals through payroll deduction, pre-taxed. There'll still be investment offerings through the target, and includes target date options, which a lot of investment professionals really emphasize that those are really good options. And then the board oversight of the plan will still happen. And so our next steps, as Councilman Moss mentioned, we've communicated to our employees through email. We've also, schools and the sheriff are part of this plan, and they have been communicated with also. We're in the process of finalizing the RFP. We will issue that, and then we'll go through an evaluation process with, I think, a 6-member evaluation committee. If a new vendor is selected, because the current vendor could also opt to bid on this, we'll transition to a new record keeper, and at the end of the new contract term, we'll transition to the 457 plan with the state, as initially decided.
Yeah, John?
Just so the council knows, when the board does meet, it's a lot of reps from the school board, city employees.
Yes.
Employee reps, professional groups, and Dana does a great job. They do take a very deep dive, rigorous look
Yes.
across all the performance relative to other index funds, so they do a very due diligence job. And they're very they're conservative with our process. We let people be liberal with their investments.
Great. John, thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Good job, Alice.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Alice, appreciate it. All right, council, so we're going to transition now to our operating budget, and we have 4 briefings today. And our first briefing is, hopefully the judge is here.
All rise.
I'd like to introduce you to Judge Hollowell. He is the presiding judge for the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. And he's asked to, we don't normally get a judge to come, but he's got an issue that we have discussed, and going to lay out his budget, and also to talk a little bit about the plight that the judges are having with the clerks.
Thanks very much, Mr. Hanson, Mayor, and City Council members. Thank you very much. All right, we are 37 state-funded full-time employees. We've got a couple part-time employees in our office, 6 judges. We do custody, visitation, child support, child delinquency, protective orders, foster care. We do 62,000 hearings with almost 30,000 cases filed each year. We're one of, if not the busiest, we're one of the very busiest juvenile courts in the state. We do nearly 3,000 newly driver's license ceremonies. I heard earlier in y'all's one of your presentations about the opioid crisis and everything. Every time that a kid comes before me to get their driver's license, I warn them absolutely about the dangers of heroin, opioids, drugs. Marijuana is a big thing these days. There's just growing medical evidence of how THC is so much more dangerous today because of the strains that are being developed than it was 30, 40 years ago. And it's having these long-term consequences on mental health. When they take it now, they have all kinds of issues. But see, that's a little bit of a stump speech for me. So I get sidetracked. So our total budget is $180,000. We've been at that figure for, I think, the last, at least 8 years probably. The vast majority of it is what we detail as other charges. We do have some manpower that we use the money for. And one of the things that we've had to do is we've got all kinds of files everywhere. And we've had to expunge these files after a certain periods of time. And of course, the clerks having to deal with all these 27,000 new cases being filed, they still have to find time to go and expunge the files from 10, 15 years ago. So we are able to have some extra employees to do that. Additionally, we're going to start scanning. We're going to become an electronic filing court in the near future. And so all the old files have to be scanned in if we're all going to be an electronic court. So we use those.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
Judge. So these are paper files.
Correct.
These are, I just want to, I don't know if council maybe.
Right.
So these aren't electronic files.
No, these are all paper files at this point in time that we're expunging and we're scanning into the. So this is just the breakdown of the operating budget. It looks like we're asking for a little bit less this year. The other expenses were for postage, copier rentals, copier leases rather, supplies, travel, those kinds of things. Over the last couple of years, we haven't spent all the money, but I think this year we did. We had we've got 2 new judges coming in. Judge Tim Quick started April 1st. Judge Cheshire Everly will start July 1st. I think they're getting new carpet in their chambers. We've collected various fees, almost $140,000 worth for city charges. If a criminal case is filed under state, it goes to the state. But if it's a city code violation, then we collect that for you guys. Then no major changes from our department budget. Here's the big reason why I'm here today. I am requesting for our clerks a salary supplement of $207,000. It would give each of our staff a 15% bump in their salary. What we find is that they just don't make enough. We get poached by private attorneys' offices. We get poached by the sheriff has taken one of our employees in a couple weeks. My clerk, who's one of our best clerks, she unfortunately got divorced maybe about 3 or 4 months ago. She can't afford to live in Virginia Beach on her own salary. She's moving to Florida with her mother. So because of all these, the files and the paperwork is so difficult. It takes almost a year to train a clerk to be able to process, all the forms that are necessary, especially for the foster care. The foster care is just an immense amount of paperwork. And as a result, we get them trained, takes about a year, and then about 6 months later or another year later, the private attorney's offices come in and just pick them off. And as a result, I think, they only basically stay an average of a year and a half. I think 40% of our staff is less than 2 years. So just a few other quick points, if I may. Basically, a newly hired deputy clerk makes $14 an hour. This supplement would increase that to $16.50 an hour. 95% of our staff are women. 65% are beach residents. So 15 of our staff, 40%, have a second job because their income from the state won't cut it. Several have reported receiving some type of public assistance, whether it's food stamps, WIC, or supplemental help for their child care. If on a deputy clerk salary, if they have 2 children, they would qualify for a public defender if they were charged with a crime, the Indigent Defense Commission. And so that's where their salaries are. Like I said, 40% of our staff have less than 2 years of service. And we've never made this request to the council before to get this supplement funded. So we would really appreciate your help and look forward to answering any
Okay,
questions.
Mr. Moss and Mr. Hanson.
First of all, I appreciate you calling the other morning. I appreciate it. I'm glad to see you doing better.
Yes, sir. Thank
As
you.
I explained on the phone, we're not in the business of paying social wages. We got to pay what the market will bear. That's, otherwise everybody can have a different definition. That's why we have a spread. But at what salary point are you losing people? I realize people can't spend benefits.
Right.
And people can't take into consideration the retirement implications that go with higher pay, but that's a cost.
Right.
I don't know any law firms paying defined benefit pensions that I know of and making big contributions to their clerks. So at what salary point are you actually losing the clerk?
It's at probably at the lower end. Like I said, 40% have less than that 2 years of experience. And we've got several that have been there many, many years.
Here's what I'm trying to get to. If say the average weekly wage in the private sector is about $18 an hour in Virginia Beach. That's the average across 151,000 private sector employees. So that gives you an idea that you're not far off that mark. So there's lots of ways to deal with compensation. There's pay retention benefit. Retention pay, is one way to do things versus increased salary, which has a lot of pension costs, which people can't spend pensions. They don't see that pay because it's not in their checks, but it's a cost to us, that we have to pay that the private. So I'm trying to understand, is the private sector paying $40,000 for these people? Are they paying $30,000? Are they?
No, I think it's up closer to $35,000, $40,000 for these. The entry level, I believe, is $28,500 or something like that.
You're trying to prevent turnover. I understand all of that.
Right.
In our point of view, we're trying to look at what's the least expensive way to prevent turnover
Sure.
for things that are a state responsibility.
I understand.
I'm sure that's where the manager's coming from, and I appreciate where he's coming from. But there's a lot of strategies besides increasing the direct salary, which carries all these other costs with it. And I hope that as we look towards, we can look at some options. There's retention bonuses. There's, other ways to look at making up differences that puts net patch, but doesn't drive all these employer costs on the other side of the ledger. And would represent what the private sector is really paying. Because they're not paying defined benefit costs. They're not carrying a 22% labor premium for that. And they're not having generous pension plans for their other employees as a general rule. And they generally don't provide any family health coverage at all. You gotta pay all that yourself. So you gotta look at the total package. I understand you can't spend benefits at the grocery store. I understand that, but it is a bigger package than just the nominal salary. So I'm trying to understand, are there more avenues to solving it than just traditionally driving up our employer's share of the cost, but still meeting your needs for retention? I hope the city manager and HR can give us some ideas, but I am concerned on taking on, additional liabilities if there's another solution.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Hanson, then Jess.
Yes,
And then Sabrina.
in response to Mr. Jones, who called me also on this matter, I did some looking into and interviewed Judge Hallwell. fellow cities are faced with the same complex issue associated with the salaries of the clerks. This is state paid wage. They don't do a very good job. I think most of us would complain about what the comp board provides from the state level to support our courts, especially our clerks. But the cities of Alexandria, they provide 15%. Arlington, their local jurisdiction, provides 15%. Fairfax, 15%. Falls Church, 15%. Loudoun, 10%. Stafford, 15%. What you're hearing from the judge is not unlike what I hear as I go through our budget and I try to weigh what's affordable to the taxpayers, what's affordable in our budget. We have to make cuts quite a bit across the departments. There's always a lot of good initiatives out there, but there are some basic ones that start to hit you in the gut a little bit harder. The ability to provide the services that Building 10 has to provide to us in our city. I provide you those comparables so that the council can take that under advisement. That's what we do during this operating budget series for about 5-6 weeks. And I just wanted to share with you what other cities of comparable size here in the Commonwealth are doing for their clerks. I think it's something legislatively we should consider as a carry forward, maybe try to push the comp board to take a look at this at the state level and see if they, having had a windfall and made a decision at the General Assembly level what to do with that windfall, this is something maybe they might have considered. And I know, Mr. Jones, I'm stealing your thunder because you're the guy that put that in my head, so I'll throw that ball back to you.
Did you want to respond, Lois?
I have a question. The $138,000, Judge, that you collect in fees, where is that going?
It's my understanding that it's going back to the city in forms of fines and those kinds of things.
Is that the same money, is that part of the money that,
I'm going to
And it
defer.
just goes to the general fund.
Yeah.
It's money that's received in the general fund, and we appropriate against that.
appropriate?
So I mean, it's part of our, it's an estimated revenue in the
What
general.
do you appropriate it to?
It comes in as a general fund revenue, so it's supporting the entire general fund. So, I mean, not necessarily specifically this, but it's a general fund revenue like real estate tax or personal property or anything like that. But it's already estimated, is my point. It's not, there's not additional revenue out there to estimate.
So it's allocated?
Yes, sir.
It's not, we don't color the money in the general fund. It goes to all the general fund.
Okay, so we're doing something, what's the deal we're doing with Tina Center?
Tina Center, she gets designated funds that come into her, that are designated to her, and she wanted to forego using that inside her office and put that towards the clerk's salaries associated in her office. So we started to make moves because she brought revenues forward to help support that. These designated funds, we could push that in that direction, but remember, that's just put into the general fund along with everything.
It comes out, it's a reduction in the general fund, but I guess the issue is that we've set a precedent with the clerks, with the circuit courts, fees, fines, and all that sort of thing. And I can understand why the judge and the people who work in his office are looking at that and they're saying, well, you know, wait a minute, why do they get this privilege and we don't? You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So we need to look at that, I think.
Barbara?
Are there also other employees, other than the clerk of court, that we supplement who are state funded essentially? but are not
Sheriffs.
Sheriff, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office.
Commonwealth?
Yeah.
So it's not something that we haven't done. I really, you know, this is, kind of troubling when we look at something like 27,000 cases in our juvenile domestic relations court by itself. That's pretty heavy, and dealing with our, really vulnerable young people is concerning, especially when we're talking about the foster care situation. We really want there to be a really good system over there in dealing with these young folks. And so making sure we've got the people who are trained and are not having to worry about how they're going to support their own children, I think it's something we need to look at.
If I may make
Oh,
one more
sure.
comment, Mayor. I just think it's an equity issue here. And I'm not sure we're being equitable, that's all.
Okay, Rosemary, then Jim, and then
And-
Sabrina.
Yeah, and what about the circuit court judges, the general district judges? and-
The circuit court judges also get some, I don't know exactly what they do with their money, but they also, not just Tina, the clerk's office, but the circuit judges get money from the city. I understand they use that for positions, secretarial help and that type of thing.
So their support staff makes more than your support staff?
Yeah, I'm 95% sure of that. I can't tell you.
What about the general district?
They get more money than we do, and I don't know what the breakdown, but that's also my understanding. Since they've got their traffic, they give you guys more.
Is there any way we can get an accounting of what the different,
We will do that.
because if we want to look at equity, we need to find out what everybody's doing.
I'm just saying.
No, I'm agreeing with you on the equity, but if we're going to have equity, we need to look at what the equity is.
Jim?
So two things. One, to follow up on what Rosemary just said. Last year, I received a number of complaints from citizens about the general district court clerks and the fact that phone calls weren't being answered or people were left on hold for a really long time. And frankly, I met with the judge and the clerk there to talk to him about it because I was trying to brainstorm maybe we could move volunteers in there because they don't really use volunteers and just things like that. And of course, their comment was the exact same thing was, our people don't get paid enough. So one thing, and I don't disagree with what Judge Hollowell is suggesting, but we need to be cognizant of the fact that General District Court has every right to come in and request the same thing, and their universe is a good bit bigger than $200 and some odd thousand. So the question I have, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, they pay the clerks the same thing statewide?
Yes.
So what could be good money in Nelson County or Wise County is not so good in Fairfax or Virginia Beach.
That's
Okay,
right.
So
That's right.
that's the other issue too. That
And there's half dozen other jurisdictions that also do the same, that,
yeah, but I mean, if you're out in one of the poorer
right.
rural counties, and you're going to see
The cost of
that,
living's less.
that this is actually good money for that. But okay, that's good to know. Maybe that's something that we need to talk about as a legislative package that perhaps that the state should index it based on cost of living for these jobs. Because I know they pay state troopers more money who are stationed in Northern Virginia than they do the ones down here.
Sabrina?
I'd just like to say, thank you, Judge Hollowell, for coming down to advocate for the funding. Of course, I've worked in the juvenile domestic relations court, and I know how valuable of the job that you do and the clerks do, and I'm very appreciative of that. And I understand as well how difficult it is to live on $28,000 a year. I've done that. That's not any money. You need some type of supplement from day to day. When you make $28,000 a year, you're trying to decide if you're going to pay a utility bill or if you're going to eat. You start going into food insecurity and a myriad of other areas. So to me, this is a paramount issue. We need to find a way to put it in our budget. We need to take the lead on this. I know other cities are, doing certain things, but I think here for our clerks, we really need to show them by, making sure they're taken care of and meeting those needs, because it is very difficult, to live on $28,000 a year. When you hear that many of the clerks are on public assistance and that sort of thing, that just should not be. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And I hope the council as has been echoed, will consider this and make sure we put it in the budget and really help with this issue. It's very disconcerting to me.
Aaron?
I guess this question for the city manager, for yourself. Out of the $138,621, is this an average number you usually take in for fees, or do the years fluctuate? I just like to see maybe 5 years of.
Yeah, I don't know that.
What's how much money is taken in from fees associated with that?
Anybody else? John?
I think this points out the trouble we have as we continue to create these stovepipes and we reduce the unrestricted general fund for what we think at the time is a one-of-one solution to solve a problem, rather than trying to move more stovepipes, make the pool that we're making decisions from, and then having each and every year truly have requirements compete. As it is, we got TIP fund, the TAP fund, the this fund, the this fund, the that fund, and everyone thinks that's their money. And then when a new requirement comes up that's important, like flooding, it's like, sorry, we have all our money booked up on trust funds, only your choice is raise taxes. You know, rather, because we have parted out all, and we've taken away our flexibility to manage without people thinking we're taking something that they're quote unquote entitled to because they have this trustee account which legally has no constraints, but politically does have constraints. So as we solve this problem, I prefer we solve it by finding offsets to something that we think is less important. But when you're doing this calculation at $18 an hour, whatever it is, and you back off the pay, somebody with 2 kids and single is still gonna be getting public assistance. You can walk down the numbers, you can go and look at the chart. So you won't be solving that particular issue at that nominal change in hourly salary. I mean, you probably already know that. So we just need to make sure we know the problem that we are solving and the problem that we're not. But every little additional dollar is better than the dollar you didn't have, so I appreciate what that means.
Right.
But we shouldn't be thinking that that small a movement is making a difference in
silver
terms
bullet.
of disqualifying for other kind of help that they need. Because we have 70% of our private sector workforce, their average weekly wage is $714. Multiply that times 2,080 if they're all, so everyone in our community in the private sector, we have a very high percentage of low-paid private sector work. And we can't raise the national average to fix their problems. So I think as we look at this, we just need to make sure we know what we are mitigating, but we need to be honest with ourselves about what we're not fixing. Because it takes a lot more than, 18 bucks an hour to fix the problem you're talking about. Not saying we shouldn't do what we can, but we shouldn't let ourselves be fooled that these people still aren't financially struggling in this community, because they are. And the cost of government is part of that problem.
Okay, Barbara?
It's been several years since we've done an overall salary study. I don't know how we're doing it now, whether we're just trying to keep up individually with the jobs as we go along, but I know that in the past, a couple of times I remember when we did studies that looked at all of our jobs and looked at the comparable in the private sector and see if we are where we should be when we're competing with the private sector for those same jobs. How do we keep up with that now? And maybe it's time that we do another one of those.
Well, only if you
How
can
many other-
afford,
how many
only
other
if you can
employees do we have?
afford, Ms. Henley, only if you can afford to pay the piper when you see what it says.
No.
And in a growing economy where we are in the recruiting and retention competition for talent and people to do jobs like the judge is talking about, but to compete
Employment rate's so
for
low.
everything from police officers to go to, people to go to the police academy, to engineers, to accountants. And we see the actions that we take on an individual basis to hire talent to fill supervisory positions in this economy. And you're faced with a new public enemy number one, an emergent threat to the economic stability and quality of life of our entire city. I'm saying that we do manage that. We manage that by the individual departments that are out there trying to recruit and bring talent on board. We're having, Regina's reported to us, and I'll be happy to get her to give you an update. She might address that. I'll get her to address that when she comes in for the HR briefing. But we're having the highest level of turnover that we've had in the 14 years that I've been here, and certainly long before that. By virtue of seniority and age, as people turn over, the advantage we have is that we're taking senior salaries and replacing those with junior salaries, but we're also promoting up and maintaining those. So, we can do that. I don't feel it's necessary, just in response to your inquiry. I think we're in an each's competitive environment, and we're spending an extraordinary amount of management, time and effort to look at our vacancies and to fill and recruit. So,
Well, my point was that I don't feel that I'm in a knowledgeable enough position individually to have to know what we should be paying each of our employees and if we're paying a fair amount. I know from time to time, such as this, we get this brought to our attention that, you know, we're having a hard time hiring engineers, or we're having a hard time hiring so-and-so because our salary is not keeping up with the private sector. I just think it's something that we need to know based on we certainly need to have employees who are going to be able to work for the city and do the efficient job. And if we are competing, we're just going to have to know it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to try to equalize it all in 1 year. But I certainly would like to know how we're keeping up with what's happening in the private sector and what we need to do, and make sure, because it's sort of like a stab in the dark if we're doing with these things each one at a time as it comes to us. I think we need that background information.
John?
On that point, a big challenge we face is all people in the workforce today don't put the same value on pensions that people once did, and they want to know the dollars they're earning today, and they don't take into account the net present value of these long-term, which is why companies have gotten rid of them, because they're too expensive. Government and maybe Virginia Power might be the last of the, and railroads, because they have to. And it's how do you get people to value that defined benefit pension as a future when they're not interested in staying that long, which gets back to what? Legislative changes, because now what we once thought was an attractive advantage for recruitment is these defined benefit pension plans don't carry the weight in the competitive job market that they once did. And now they can become, in fact, a liability to recruitment rather than an advantage. And that's something, but if we hire them, we still got to pay it.
Yeah,
But in this study, you calculate the whole benefits package as well.
okay.
You don't just do salary.
Okay, Louis.
And John's making a good point, and that is, that, you know, everybody who is involved with a defined benefit plan has a very serious problem. And that is the rate of return on investments in these defined benefit plans, and the amount of income that is made on the investments versus the outgo of cash that's paid out for employees when they get to the point of retirement. And every defined benefit plan in the country is short. That's what it comes down to. And that's why private enterprise, quite frankly, is getting out of it and going to a different type of plan for retirement. And, you know, it's one of those, I forget what I'm trying to think of the word, but it's an archaic system, and we're still stuck.
Contribution.
Is what it comes down to. And, you know, until government starts looking at it in a different way, why the problem that the judge is bringing to us is going to continue to be there, because what we're doing is we're, by the obligation of these defined benefit plans and the OPEB plan and that kind of thing, we are basically taking the cash away from usable income for the employees in trying to keep up with the investment requirement of the defined benefit plan. And it's almost impossible in today's economy to do that, so.
Well said, Mr.
Good.
Jones.
At this point, if we can wrap up, we have a hard break coming up at 5. But if I can say, I'm just delighted with the tenor and content of this conversation, because I really think it flushes out, a lot of the problems, and I think Mr. Moss is bringing out the systematic approach. You have a problem, but it's all part of a whole picture. And one of the things I'm going to recommend to this council, that prior before we go to Reconciliation Day, that we actually sit down a couple hours before we go to reconciliation and have this kind of discussion, and to put the whole maybe budget into a little bit of a budget context. Mrs. Henley has some concerns about stormwater and everything, that we may be able to have this type of really good discussion and just taking a look at the system as a whole instead of, in parcels. So, I hope that we might be able to do that going forward. Okay, but thank
you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
it.
I'm also remiss, Judge Debbie Bryan joined us here today, and I didn't introduce her. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all.
Thanks, judges.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Next, we have planning and community development. We got Bobby Tahan, our new director, and take it away, Bobby.
Yes.
You're on the clock.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, council members. Glad to present the planning and community development budget for fiscal year 2019. Our proposed budget includes a 20. I'm sorry, fiscal year 20. I'm sorry, sir. Yes, sir. Our proposed budget includes 141 FTEs. We have 5 divisions in the Department of Planning, which includes the Director's Office, which includes management and support, which is helping to interact and handle the census process, and as well as the development liaisons that work with individual businesses and development groups that come in to go through our processes. We have Planning Administration, which most people understand as current planning. It staffs all of our boards and commissions, which include Planning Commission, Chesapeake Bay, Wetlands Board, and our historic portion, as well as floodplain management in the CRS program, which notably has just, the hard work in that division has resulted in over $1 million in savings to our citizens through the CRS program. Zoning Administration enforces the zoning ordinance, both in plan review and inspections, and they also staff the Board of Zoning Appeals. Permits and inspections administers the building code, as well as the DEQ stormwater and erosion and sediment control requirements. Our strategic growth areas include area planning, comprehensive and transportation planning, as well as parking management and mass transportation, mass transit operations. Overall, last year, our last fiscal year, we issued over 35,000 building permits, as well as performing over almost 100,000 inspections, and reviewed over 2,800 site plan, had over 2,800 site plan reviews. Our general fund budget request is $18,990,000, with a total proposed budget, including all funds, of $25,784,000. You can take a look at our programmatic budget. You can see that a large portion of the pie deals with mass transit operations as well as parking management. Our next largest portion is also the permits and inspections portion, which is recovered through our fees that are charged. Per the state code, building permit offices are allowed to do cost recovery for their fees, and that department's handled through those. Here you have our detailed line item of our budget, of our operating budget. Generally seeing, you can see that the Director's Office shows a decrease due to IT maintenance transferring to the CIP budget, as well as right-sizing some of the positions, as Mr. Hanson stated earlier, dealing with people retiring and other things. Planning Administration showed a shifting of a line item of an existing filled position, which is a planner that's actually in the Strategic Growth Area office. So that position is already filled, but for some reason the position was in the current planning line item, so that was shifted over. Zoning Administration shows an increase due to our proposal to request 2 additional inspectors to handle short-term rentals. The Development Services Center, again, through retirements as well, we're showing that decrease in our budget. Permits and inspections shows a slight increase to deal with contract work so that we can try to maintain our response times, as well as we have updates to the building code that happen. We have to purchase all those new code books for all the inspectors. It's pretty expensive to buy all those code books. Already explained the increase into the strategic growth area, which also includes the reallocation in transportation planning. Has a reallocation of a planning position to put us back to where we were previously, to make sure that we have 2 transportation planners. Mass transit shows an increase of $745,000. This is an adjustment to pay costs, the increase in HRT costs for the operation of the HRT buses. And then that shows our general fund total request. Through the enterprise fund, we are showing a increase of $548,000, which shows the change of which shows and follows our increase due to necessary maintenance for our existing facilities, as well as details for handling our parking. This also has a portion in it where there's a proposal to change the from the tip fund, which was a alteration to where there's used to be parking fees and fines that were sent into the tip fund instead of going to parking management. Those fees typically go throughout the rest of the city, go to parking management in order to utilize for their operations. And also we have the slight decrease in the tip fund request that is used for that fund there is used to pay for the trolley that's at the oceanfront, but also the decreasing shows a reimbursement that was given from the state due to an overcharge for transportation. Again, these are our highlights as far as our major changes in budget highlights. We added, requesting the addition of 1 FTE for our customer service area. We currently have 2 contract workers there and 1 full-time position. We have centralized our customer service to that 1 section so that we can funnel people throughout the rest of the department appropriately so we can get them to the right person instead of them wandering around. 2 FTEs are requested for zoning code inspectors that will support the short-term rental program, as you know, will go into effect in November. We want to make sure we have the ability to enforce the regulations that were passed, as well as deal with the permitting aspect of the short-term rentals. And then again, the reallocation of the in a planner for the transportation planning position to a planning evaluation coordinator to decrease from the previous position. There is a proposal to provide funding for the new HRT bus route 24, which will connect the Pembroke area to the Greenbrier area. It goes through the Kempsville corridor, so this is an opportunity to connect those 2 business hubs. Again, I discussed the previous increase of $454,000 for HRT, and we did have a decrease for software support that went to the IT CIP, as well as a decrease in conversion of historical paper documents. We are continuing to try to find ways to do that in an efficient manner without having to contract out. So we're doing our best to utilize funds appropriately. Some of our initiatives that we have underway, again, discussing short-term rentals. We do want to make sure that with these regulations, we want to be able to have the right people and the right positions to be able to enforce the regulations. No need to have a regulation if you can't handle the additional workload. Parking enterprise, and I'll clarify this. This deals with as new parking becomes online at the Central Beach and Convention District, parking management will need to help provide support to assure that we have customer service levels high, where people can understand where to park, where to go. That includes the counters that you may see currently now at the convention center, doing similar things like that to make sure that the public has an understanding and knows where to go for their parking. Again, as I stated earlier, permit fees cover but do not exceed operations as required by the Code of Virginia. Sea level rise and climate change, as well as changing stormwater management regulations, increases the complexity of reviews. It takes more staff time, and it's a lot more difficult to handle them, but our staff is being able to keep up. Council, as well as the other boards and commissions, will start using the Granicus Legislative Management System in the upcoming months. This is a bit of a change and will require some additional staff training to make sure that we get these underway properly. As well, we're beginning and preparing the public engagement for the comprehensive plan and zoning and development code updates to address citizen interests, best practices, and recurrent flooding and sea level rise. And this, I am finished with my presentation. And
Louis,
questions.
and then John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What, this new HRT bus route 24 Kempsville corridor, 291,456, how'd that come about?
I was remiss to not introduce my team here, but I can have Tara. Do you want to?
Sure. This actually came
To the
about-
podium, please, Tara.
I'm so sorry. This actually came about because of the light rail proposal that was originally put out there. There were certain feeder routes that were studied at that time, and this Chesapeake route actually showed that it would perform very well. And this is Chesapeake actually putting money on the table to actually kind of step up the game to participate in transit itself.
Are there any routes that have fallen down that are being decreased to make it up?
Actually, over the past year since I have been working with HRT, if the ridership falls below, I believe it's 8 passengers a day, they do discontinue the service. So it is a balancing act throughout the region.
But have we cut any routes?
We have cut some max routes, yes.
What did you cut?
I believe that it was 920, but I can get that information to you.
And where did 920 run?
It was actually to one of the bases, so they cut some of the service.
Thank you.
John?
I'm not saying anything. First of all, we didn't do light rail, so that should make us fundamentally relook at that. 8 passengers a day would justify the cost of a route. I'd like to know what those routes are. If you look at our analysis, we went from 1.7% of our population using transit to 0.6%. I look at that route that runs down Haygood Road, I see it all the time. I mean, I know Louis, you probably see it too. I mean, it's empty most of the time. And I know I asked this question, I'd like to see the numbers, and I'd like to see the analysis. You said this was when we did light rail, but what is the driver of work people leaving from Greenbrier, parking their car to come to the town center area to work? I mean, I think that business case, if that's what it was predicated on, per your remarks, it needs a zero-based review. If Chesapeake wants to put good money after bad, that's their choice, but I don't think we have to follow suit. I'd like to see that analysis, and
I would be happy to provide that to you.
And these bus routes around the city, I'd rather see us improve the frequency on Virginia Beach Boulevard. I know we have, and some other places where there are riders, where we have employment that help us better than building something that if you build it, you hope they'll come, where we have places where we could increase the frequency, we get a better return on ridership, because what they tell us is you gotta have 15-minute frequency. So what routes do we have that if we put that money on it, and a place where we have the people with affordable housing or whatever, that we might get a greater passenger return? So who's doing this systems analysis and looking at where you get the biggest return for $291,000? But that being predicated on light rail is already suspect. We didn't build it.
Well, the analysis itself was separate. It just happened to be conducted at that same time. But one of the things I would like to share with you, Councilmember Moss, is that actually a consultant, WSP, is working with HRT right now, and that analysis is actually being paid for by the Department of Rail and Public Transit, because, as you pointed out, we do provide transit on historical routes that may not need to be there anymore. So this is actually a project that's been ongoing for the past several months. I've been part of the technical work group, and they're looking at different routes. They're looking at frequency, and they're also looking at on-demand transit.
Well, I tell you, I'm just not that's got to be a compelling case, but to hear that we keep a ride with 8 passengers a day is absolutely incredible.
But I'll be able to get, actually, as a liaison to the HRT, I'll be able to get more information on you for that. I was sick.
And I'm sorry, I think you understood me. It misunderstood me. It's actually the 8 passengers per stop.
Then I know that that's not true on the one going down Haygood Road to the light rail station, because I
Okay.
drive by all those stops frequently. and I've never seen more than two, and usually it's one with that baby, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, at the stop, so I'd like to see the counts on, because I know they keep them.
Hey, good, okay.
You can get on
All
of them.
riderships, and we'll bring you the business case for the new route that partnering with Chesapeake.
I'm in favor of putting money where it actually puts people in the seats, but to do experimentation, hoping they'll show up is another story.
Okay, Barbara, Jim, then Jess.
Well, we started having some sessions after after the light rail was defeated to say, well, okay, we didn't do light rail, what are we going to do? And how are we going to provide a transit system that really works? And just remembering the folks who came down to speak about their needs, if you've got to wait an hour in between a bus coming, you just can't use transit. And so, it's sort of a chicken or an egg thing. If the system is not good enough to be something that people can rely on, then people can't use it. And people are making a choice between having to support a car to get to work, or how are they going to have a job? So you have to look at the total thing. You have to look at the total situation. And in order for transit to work, there has to be an amount of it that makes it a system that people can rely on. And from what I heard, listening to the people who came to those sessions, we don't have a transit system that works. And I think we really do need to look at it. We sort of stopped after the first 6 months, then we stopped having those meetings, and then we haven't had any since. But I think we have to face the reality that we've got a transit system that doesn't work. It's not something that people can rely on. And for somebody to have to go 2 hours on a bus ride or transit ride to get to work and then to come home, or to get to TCC or whatever, a city like Virginia Beach, when we talk about how great we are, this is one thing we're not great in.
Just as a side comment, John mentioned a young lady who's always on Haygood Road, holding a small baby.
No, I'm saying about his thing, I'm not
Holding
laughing at that thing.
a small baby.
I've sat and talked to her.
Straight.
It was in the freezing weather and the snow, last year at least, and this year without snow. And I wanted to stop and pick her up and take her where she wanted to go, but I didn't want to get arrested. So, the bottom line is it's not working.
It's sad.
It's not working.
I think,
Yeah. Wait a minute, Jess, then Aaron.
I wanted clarification on this 291. So were costs participating with Chesapeake?
That's correct.
And how much are they contributing?
They are contributing $125,000 to it, because the majority of the line falls in Virginia Beach.
Okay. Great. That's what I wanted clarification on. Thank you.
Aaron.
I think Barbara, Ms. Henley, Councilwoman Henley makes a great point of our transit system having to be more reliable. And obviously, as our city continues to grow, those routes will continue to shift and change as our population changes in high density areas as well. But it's whether they have 8 riders or not per stop, these are routes that people depend on. These are routes people depend on to get to and from their work, their doctor's appointments, see family, have access. We talked about access when our public safety lady came in and gave her briefing on how citizens in Bayside area didn't have access to actually immunization shots. And those routes are crucial. So this is something we really need to look at, and it's very important to our city as we continue to grow. But I myself, I don't necessarily justify whether or not a route is a good route based on ridership, because people pay taxes in our city, and it's up to us to make sure they can get around to where they need to go. I know from, obviously, we're in this budget process, and I like to be fiscally responsible with the money we do allocate towards the routes and make sure the routes are most efficient But again, the people who, whether it's 2 or 3 people that ride those routes, they need those routes. So I think we do have to comprehensively look at a way to improve our system here as well. So I just like to.
Sabrina?
Yeah, I believe this route, it runs through the Centerville District, and time again, that's all I hear. Better service, more connectivity, and if this is something that's going to serve the citizens, you know, the Centerville District better, I think we need to focus on it. I think we need to move forward with it, because that's all I hear. We don't have a comprehensive transit system, so until we get there, we need to, as Dave says, crawl, walk, run. We need to start here, and it's going to benefit, I know, the citizens in my district, and it's going to show them that we're listening and we're putting them first. Because all I hear, you know, are complaints about our transit system, our bus system, you know, and it seems like these things are being pushed, you know, to the wayside, and they feel left behind. So I'm in agreement with this. I think we
Okay,
should.
Jess, then Rosemary.
Can we get a copy of where this route specifically, like a map?
Yes.
So we can see it?
We
and
have-
how it connects?
Yes, we have that. We'll make sure to send that in your Friday packet for you.
Okay, Rosemary.
Just one little comment. If we've got a system that's really bad, not working, that's a real waste of money. So, I mean, we've got to figure this out, and it's better to spend more money that's going to really help the people who need it. Because if it's not working, that's a worse waste of money.
Right.
Well, that's not what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing that it's not working. I'm hearing that this is something that can be a step
Yeah,
to,
but
to be
I'm-
more
I'm
comprehensive.
supportive of we want to work better.
If I could just, put a capstone on this, because once again, we got a hard break coming up. Aaron and I attended a briefing by HRT, and we granted that a lot of the modes that we're using now really don't serve, because one of the problems is not the bus service, it's getting to the bus from people's homes and getting, and then from their work back to the buses. So there's a thing. But once again, and we're looking ahead, and I know this is not going to be next year or next couple of years, but they're talking about point of contact, actually going into the neighborhoods, picking up the elderly, taking them to the doctor's appointments. It actually might be, there might be some financial models that might be cheaper than running the empty buses, in terms of having point-to-point, contact where, it's target specific. In other words, you're picked up at your home and you go to the doctor, you're taken to the grocery store and doing things. But once again, that's going to be a way. They're talking about contracting with Uber, to help out certain people. Yeah, Aaron, you were at that meeting.
Yeah, we actually have a meeting tomorrow morning with the HRT to discuss that as well. So John, we'll be able to get you and the rest of the council members the information that.
Yeah, they're looking at changing their business model, I think, in the future.
They are. I mean, I think we understand that this is an evolving process and that we need to get on board and keep up with. So I'll get you more information.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay? All right, Bobby?
Thank you.
Hey, Bobby, I just want to say that I've been hearing a lot of great things about your department in terms of getting things more efficient, expedited, and, customer service. And your department is going to be a major player in a lot of the economic development initiatives that we're going to be bringing to the city. And I'm just glad that, I'm just hearing good things. I thought I should pass it on to you.
Thank you, sir.
John?
On that note, I think that's changing, as you've probably seen a lot of these Medicare, I'll call it Medicare HMOs. If you notice, one of the benefits they provide as part of that package is transportation to and from doctors. I think that's gonna change the customer base, which is gonna help facilitate some of the models that you and Aaron talked about, because the customer base with someone paying is gonna be there, and it's always money that drives markets.
Great. Once again, another great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, we got Public Works coming through the door. Mark Johnson, begin.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mayor Dyer, Vice Mayor Wood, City Council members, thank you for having me again. This is part 3 of the Public Works budget presentation, If you recall, I was here on the 12th of March to talk about the Waste Management Fund. I was here on March 19th to talk about the Stormwater Fund, and this presentation right now just rolls it all into one. Okay. Quickly, the mission statement. Basically, our mission statement is to manage our programs and resources to promote the health, safety, and welfare of our residents, our businesses, and our visitors. We have 6 core infrastructure programs: stormwater management, transportation, facilities management, fleet management, waste management, and beach management. We continue to work at a high level on all these diverse programs, but we still have budget drivers such as maintenance and infrastructure cost increase, stormwater requirements, challenge of transportation funding, management of the city's facilities, and the waste management fund, getting that to the right appropriate cost. Just to show you our org chart right here, I'm going to start from the left and move to the right. Operations and support, basically that covers contracts, real estate, and waste management. That's run by Bobby Wheeler sitting over here. Next is Public Works Operations, run by Philip Cutter. That is pretty much stormwater operations, maintenance, and streets and highways, and traffic management operations. Basically, you always hear me say truck, shovels, and men. That's Philip. The city engineer, Phil Pullen, is not here right now. He's over in Suffolk with VDOT, trying to get some more money for transportation projects. I've got Tom Nicholas here with facilities and management, building maintenance, facilities design and construction, and energy is what he oversees. Reggie Padgett's not here today. He manages fleet management, which takes care of all the city's equipment and fleet. And next to the computer is Michelle Clark. Michelle runs the business office in the director's office, overseeing finance and HR. Just give you a quick look at our recent achievements. Upper left is the Housing Resource Center, 63,000 square foot building, CIP cost of $27 million. It won this year's APWA Mid-Atlantic Region Project of the Year for the category of $25 million to $75 million, and Tom will go to Norfolk in May and receive the award. Good job, Tom. To the right is a picture of our iconic Lesnar Bridge, 1,570 feet long, 55 feet high. Lower right is the Parks and Recreation Administration building that Tom's team built and delivered to Parks and Recreation. The interesting thing about that, it's one of our first projects where we incorporated an open plan work environment. If you go into that building, you'll see a lot of open space for the workers to work, and it's designed more on how people work as to how people want to stay at their job and work. So it's a really neat building. And then last, lower left, Windsor Wood Canals. That's just a picture of one of the 5 canals we have been dredging, and I consider that the start of the Windsor Woods Princess Anne Plaza projects. This pie chart right here shows you the revenue for the Public Works budget. It's established by 11 funds. I'll just talk about the big 4, starting at the bottom right. VDOT fund. The city receives about $50 million from VDOT for maintenance money. A portion of it goes to Parks and Recreation. For this budget year, $44 million will come to Public Works to maintain its system. Then you have general city support at $38 million, 20%. Stormwater fund at $45 million, 23%, and then waste management fund at $38 million. Pie chart for expenditures. The 11 funds get crunched down to 9, I believe, and I'll start with the general fund and work around clockwise. The general fund is at $86 million, and $44 million of that is the VDOT funding. Stormwater utility fund, again, is at $45 million. Waste management fund is at $38 million. The Parks and Recreation fund that you see right there, that goes to facilities management work to support the rec centers. That's why we get those funds. The Tourism and Investment Program Fund, that covers facility management to maintain the infrastructure down at the resort. It covers beach operations to maintain the beach, collect the trash along the beach, grade the beach, trash along Atlantic Avenue and side streets. And then the Small Sandbridge Special Service District, that is the funding for the beach operations crew that was established, I believe, 2 years ago. And then Central City Garage Internal Services and Fuel Internal Services, that covers fleet management. This is the playbook for Public Works for FY20. I'll work through this real quickly. The general fund I'll start with and move to the right. Basically, it's increased by 21.9% or $15.5 million. FTEs have gone up, and that's the driver. It has an increase of 119 FTEs, but of that, 105 are existing FTEs that were moved from the stormwater fund to the general fund, but it also has 14 new FTEs that were, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. And so I'll go down to waste management. Waste management fund, you see an increase there, and that's based on the $2 a month fee increase. Parks and Rec Fund stays the same. That's for rec centers. Tourism Investment Fund stays the same. The Special Sandbridge District, that stays the same. Stormwater Utility Fund, again, you see the FTE decrease, and that's associated with the 105 increase up in the general fund. And then the Garage Internal Fund has one new FTE, and that's a Mechanic 3, so we can catch up with all the pieces of equipment we've been purchasing over the past 3 days. Give you a little more detail on the FTEs. We have 4 new tradesman FTEs in facilities management, and this caps out the last third year of increasing the number of FTEs for the tradesmen to a number of 12 to meet the demand that they have seen because of all the new buildings we have come online. The next one is the transfer of 105 FTEs from the stormwater fund to the general fund. And as we talked earlier, on the 19th, on the stormwater fund, the strategy there was to move $14.3 million out to create an increased amount of funding that could go to the stormwater CIP. The 6 FTEs for stormwater project management and the 4 FTEs for regulatory compliance are all stormwater positions. They were first identified with the FY18 2.5 fee increase, where we were phasing in FTEs, a total of 30 over 4 years. So in FY18, we phased in 13 FTEs. This year we phase in 10. FY21 will phase in 5, and 22 will phase in 2. And last, we have one Mechanic 1 position, and that is to help us catch up with all the maintenance. We've increased our fleet by about 110 pieces of equipment over the past 3 years. This is pretty much a recap from what I talked about on March 12th. We're proposing a $2 fee increase, $2 a month fee increase to the waste management fee. It'll cover ongoing equipment replacement plus a one-time radio replacement. Budget driver that I talked about was SIPSA. They're working on their budget. We based our budget on a $59 a ton tipping fee. SIPSA is going to have a public meeting and vote on their budget, I believe, in April. It's our understanding that that budget is going to contain a tipping fee of $57 a ton. And what that'll mean to our budget is a savings of $288,000. the chart on the right, I just want to show you where the fee started in FY12 and what kind of fund it was. The critical part is in FY17, where we really started coming off of or weaning the fund off of general fund support. The general fund supported the fee at about $10 million. And in FY18, we weaned it down where the general fund only supported it at $5.7 million. And then last year, the fund was supported by the $1.476 million of the TIP funds. So this year we're trying to get to a total whole budget that's funded by the Waste Management Fund. Just want to show you again, we still are in between Richmond and Norfolk. When we go up to $25 a month, Suffolk's always the lowest at $19.50 because they sponsor the SIPSA landfill. Stormwater, again, we have our three components of our program: water quality, flood control, and operations and maintenance. The program I talked to you about on the 19th was we wanted to generate more funding capacity to the CIP, and how we propose to do that is move $14.3 million from the Stormwater Fund to the General Fund. To cover that, we will redirect the 1 cent real estate tax that went to the Stormwater CIP, propose a 1.5 cent real estate tax to cover the remainder. In addition, add a 1 cent ERU increase to the already established and approved 2.5 cent increase to bring it up to 3.5 cents for the next 6 years. And that'll give us $24 million in operating expenditures from the fund and $21.5 million in pay-go that can go to the CIP. Show you the pie charts real quick. 99% of the revenue comes from the fee at $45.646 million. If you look at expenditures, we have risen the pay-go going to capital projects up to 47%. Prior to that, last year we had $8 million going, and that was roughly 18% of the pie. So we really have increased that amount. The only two budget units that remain funded by the Stormwater Fund is Phillips Operations and Maintenance budget unit and our inspection budget unit. We also have increased our budget service a little bit to cover debt service, and that includes debt service on the $30 million we just sold. Just show you again the ERU fee history. What's in blue gets us up to where we are today at 45.8 cents. Where we'll go next year in FY20 is 49.3 cents per day, and if we hit the 6th year, we'll be up to 66.8 cents. Okay. Our FY20 goals, of course, it's to continue to move the stormwater program and the sea level rise program forward. It's to progress our transportation projects. It's to accomplish our beach replenishment projects, which the resort beach bids are due to open tomorrow. And I understand the Army Corps of Engineers advertised Sandbridge Beach today. So they are now moving forward, and also integrate and utilize technology to increase the department's efficiency. I'll show you the picture on the right. Thankfully, we did not have any storm events this year, winter storm events, which I'm very happy for. But last year, we purchased a a salt brine machine. We're in the brine business. I don't know if you got any phone calls this fall reporting that people saw white lines on the road. The white lines is the brine we were putting down to test the equipment to make sure we're ready for the winter weather that we did not have. So I'll close out with discussion and to show you this picture of Croatan Beach. The improvements here, what you see here are the dune system that we constructed this fall and winter, and we just completed the dune grass sprigging on that. And we're working with the Corps to integrate sand replenishment of this beach with the Rudy Inlet dredging. So that.
Barbara.
I believe, excuse me, I believe we just completed one full year of the Sandbridge Beach project that we started last year, the beach maintenance. Where
Yes,
we
ma'am.
hired the 3
Yes, ma'am.
people. And so last year's budget had $844,000, and this year it went down to $463. That's because we had to purchase that equipment last year.
That is correct. We've completed our equipment purchases.
Well, how did it go?
I think it went very well. One main thing we got established was a sticker program where we politely notified our visitors that they could not leave their sunscreens or their shade tents on the beach for 5 to 7 days in a row. We placed stickers on the tents. We talked to them. They understood and they complied. If some did not comply, we set up a system where they could call a number, they could come get their tent, and it would all work. The grooming, which I know was an issue, the reports I got back were where we groomed were the best portions of Sandbridge Beach that they've ever seen down at Sandbridge. Now, there are other individuals that live down there that feel otherwise, but I think we've been working towards compromises where we only focus on the high traffic areas of the beach. So I think it worked well, and I think it's going to be even better. We have had more ability to be responsive to cleaning beach accesses, which is really the important thing. And we've been more responsive to trash collection also.
I really didn't hear complaints after an initial bump or two, so.
Philip and his team, we really dedicated our response down there. We wanted to be good neighbors is what we wanted to be, and we wanted to be recognized as a service that they knew was down there and they could utilize us.
Okay, Louis?
How's the planting going?
The planting?
Yeah.
It looks pretty sparse right now because they just did it about 2 weeks ago, but it'll take off and hopefully it'll hold up. And if there's some parts of the dune system that get blown out from a nor'easter or something, we'll just come back, we'll put more sand on, and in the next timing of the planting, we'll put more plants. The whole idea is you just keep planting until it takes over and it really establishes. Other parts of other beaches that we have put dune grasses on have really taken off well. Another one to keep an eye on is the dune system we just did with the Chesapeake Beach widening. We just finished doing those dune plantings also, and we'll watch those.
I was asking, I have a place in Duck, and they've been planting down there, and it's really taken, it's working. It really is working.
It's a little service that people don't know we do, but we plant dune grasses every year. We identify areas along the city's beach system.
John?
Can you go to slide 12, please?
Which one?
Just want to remind people, not this next, slide 12, that in every year except 1 year where we reduced the real estate tax, as we increased the trash fee, we did not offer citizens a offsetting reduction in their real estate tax rate. So we actually increased the bill to residents because we kept the money and raised the fee, just to remind people of that fact. Could you go to slide 13? You left off the city of Chesapeake's the lowest, there's 0. because they're, like ours used to be, their trash pickup is in their real estate tax, and if you control for trash collection, they have the lowest real estate tax rate in Hampton Roads.
Wait,
I'm just.
Sure.
Just for complete, they aren't billed, and it's a part of, just like us.
I agree.
Okay, if you could go to slide 15. I'm trying to, did the last 1 cent increase in the ERU fee, is that going to the operating budget? I was unclear in your explanation, or is it sticking in the stormwater CIP? Item 3, going from 2.5 to 3.5, where does that 1 cent go?
I think it goes to the 45 million, and how it gets distributed, operating budget.
In the CIP and for FY '20, it shows $55 million.
Right.
But of the $55 million, $25 million is debt, so that's not revenue. This is a revenue number. So I'm trying to figure out, is all this 1 cent going to product on the ground, or is part of that 1 cent going into the operating budget and going to labor or something? I'm trying to understand where that 1 cent goes.
Okay. David, do you want to try?
Let me see if I can, Mr. Moss. You're talking about the 1 cent ERU?
We had 2.5, which isn't a thing, and then we had this extra cent. And when you did the explanation, it sounded like some of that 1 cent revenue was going into the operating budget. That's what it sounded like, and I'm just trying to understand it because the CIP doesn't account for it.
So that whole 1 cent is going into the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, and generally it's going to be used for CIP projects. And if you look in the CIP, a lot of it is in PAYGO the first year, because, until you issue the debt, you're not going to have the debt service. So we're kind of ramping up the CIP, but generally the entire ERU rate increase is being used to maximize debt in the stormwater.
Because when you look at the CIP, there's about $8 million of retained earnings. It might be 7.5, which is a carryover from the prior year. So when you look at that $21 million, that's on slide 16, I think, if you would, please. When you look at that pie chart where it says pay-as-you-go, just so people know, 7.5, I think it's closer to 8 million of that is actually money, pay-go money that was carried over from the prior year, and it's identified in the document as retained earnings, just so people can get clarity of what actually is being raised this year going forward versus what was carried into the future.
And as we ramp up our projects and we get design completed, we're gonna be going to construction, and that's when that big surge and conversion from pay-go into long-term debt structure allows us to maximize the program.
But I want to circle back to a comment I made during the CIP, because I think it's germane, because this budget or the CIP does not reflect having a bond referendum in 2020 for a substantial sum of money, is that if we had a full-scale, big project and did an acquisition strategy, how we went about that, we could get more product on the ground in a shorter amount of time for less money per project, just because of scale. And it's just true. And so we don't have an acquisition strategy that's built on a sizable referendum, because we borrowed $200 million, well, we never actually used it because we had cash, but $200 million for Lake Gaston. I know Louis and Barbara remember that. Today, that's equivalent to about $425 million. So on a scale of what we have historically dealt with, it isn't a frightening number, but the scale, if the public buys into it, which is better than this incremental take forever approach, you can have more people bidding, less demob and mob, and you can get more done, and you probably could transfer some of your in-house workload into the management team and have them part of the design and have them operate it even. So I don't think our acquisition strategy is really the one that offers best value. It is the best incremental approach, but a lot of stuff happens over time and you incur a lot of risk. I just think we haven't had a good public debate and discussion about alternative strategies and offer that to the public and say, I know Rosemary made the point, well, what if they said no? Well, the public has a right to say no, and then we're stuck doing something on a much stricter piece. But I think if you communicate with people, big value, I think we shouldn't be timid about telling people we got a serious problem and this is what it takes to deal with it in a reasonable period of time versus, some kind of pyramid time scale. So that's just a thought. I've said it before, I'm saying it again.
Okay, thank you. At this point, we're going to be up on a hard break. If we can break and just take a little, in case you have to, need a little break.
We'll
And
bring
we'll
IT
convene
back
at-
next.
You got it, we'll bring him. Okay, we're going to adjourn into formal session.
We go into the council chambers.
Yeah, we got to be in chambers.
Do we have to be in there?
Yeah.